the biggest vocal myth of them all, the big daddy mother vocal myth, is the idea that to make a clear and ringing sound, you need to remove constrictions from the vocal tract. The theory goes something like this, that, a big drum makes a big sound, and you need to make a big drum inside of your vocal tract. And if you crowd it with too much stuff, that's going to constrict the sound, and the strangled sound is going to make you feel strangled, and it's going to be a small sound and not a powerful sound, and it's going to be a bright, small, nothing sound, because it's going to be constricted. And so there's people who dedicate their whole lives to eliminating constrictions in the vocal tract. And there's a whole school of classical singing that's the dominant school right now. And they claim that by eliminating these constrictions, you can make a clear and powerful sound. The problem is, like a lot of stuff that I wind up talking to you about, it's bullshit. It's complete bullshit. And it's not just the kind of bullshit, I think, that... Okay, so we've proven that what I'm giving you is facts. And as far as the vocal tract goes, the reason we know this feeling of having an open throat actually comes from constriction, from having a more closed throat. The reason we know is because people looked. You get the singer to sing, you say, okay, is that open throat? Or whatever, and they say, yeah, that's good. And then they were recording with an MRI or whatever, and cameras and blah. So they know what position all the stuff was actually in. And it's not what the singer says. So the thing they call open throat is actually a closed throat. It's a constricted throat. In particular, it's constricted in a special place. Using part of the epiglottis and part of the larynx itself, you make a sort of funnel shape. And now, okay, I get it. If there was no way that anyone could have seen this coming, then I understand why someone like Douglas Stanley comes along in the early 20th century and proclaims that he's a scientist, despite never doing any science, and then also tells us, and by the way, constriction is not only what makes you sound weak and what makes you feel crappy when you're trying to make a big powerful sound. Constriction is the reason it's not clear and powerful, and also constriction causes your vocal folds to rub together and give you vocal nodules, and you will lose your voice forever. So since that guy, there's a whole class of experts that exists for helping people get rid of the constrictions in their throats so that they can make a loud, powerful sound. So I can understand if there was no way they could have known before signing up for this. I could understand Douglas Stanley thinking this if there was no way for Douglas Stanley to figure out that his theory didn't make sense. But here's how we can easily figure out that Douglas Stanley's theory made no sense. Without having to use an MRI, without having to do any really scientific studies to go figure out how this works. We can just take something that's similar to a vocal tract, but that we can see. And that something is the trumpet. As you can hear, he's a very good player and has a nice tone, and it sounds like you would expect a trumpet to sound. But what would happen if we took away the constriction that's right at the base of this trumpet, just before the main length of tubing begins? We have a constriction. There's a cup shape for the player's lips, and that has its own purpose, acoustic purpose. But then we have this area that's very narrow before we get to the main tube. Why do we have this constriction? Well, it sure is a shame that we can't, like you can't play the trumpet without the mouthpiece, right? And, but, oh! Yes, we can! Do you see where I'm going with this? If Douglas Stanley had just talked maybe to, I don't know, a trumpet maker, a brass instrument manufacturer, he could have gotten a pretty simple explanation from the acoustics of this. What he should have been looking for, in the vocal tract, as far as what's making the sound powerful and clear. And I understand, the like anatomy resources maybe weren't as good back then, but it's not like the acoustics were not known. That acoustic principle has been known for quite some time. Sure, we didn't know exactly how it was done in the vocal tract. And Douglas Stanley could not have known, for instance, that the relationship between the vocal tract and the way the vocal folds are vibrating is so crazy. He couldn't have known that the reason he was looking for muscles that don't exist there, or the reason he was kind of coming up with jobs for muscles that don't make any sense, is because he had these jobs being done by something in the voice. Right? Something's going on, but I can't explain why. And it doesn't make any sense with the body parts that they're telling me in this anatomy book. So what does he do? He comes up with I guess like the best theory he can. Except he didn't have to come up with such a bad one. Because he could have asked the brass instrument manufacturers. He could have, and it's not like people didn't know that the voice and the trumpet work similarly. 50 years before Douglas Stanley probably ever taught a voice lesson, Manuel Garcia was looking at people's larynxes with dentist tools, and he figured out, look at that. It works just like a brass instrument, pretty much. Now, yeah, there's differences. Brass instruments don't have tongues and mouths and stuff. but the basic setup is just like that. So when your teacher is trying to tell you that you need to remove constrictions, they're asking you to go from this to this. And I would suggest that the real constraint on your singing is perhaps not how closed your throat is.